Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Maria. This is biblichorandmint. Subscribe if you've read a book this year. I've been wanting to do a book bracket like this for a while now, but I've faced many obstacles, mainly time. Like I really haven't had time to sit down and do this. Also format. I've never made a video like this where you're gonna see I'm gonna spend a lot of time looking at a screen recording. Setting up to film in this side of the room has been surprisingly difficult. It's kind of cramped in here and you're balanced on like a little tripod and a book and backed up against the corner of my desk. So it's a little bit of a mess, but I told myself that I would do this one. I would do the 2026 mid-year book bracket. I've read 23 books so far this year, and I just put everything into a bracket building website. I can't really wrap my head around how a bracket works if it's not like fully even numbers. So I just put it into a website. I'll leave it in the description. Not sponsored in any way, in case you wanted to use it to do your own book bracket or to do your own brackets of whatever. But here it is. We're gonna go through 4 rounds and then a final round to determine what my favorite book so far this year has been. I kind of just want to know. I want to know. There's no other reason other than I'm curious and I thought that this would be fun. And when I had a book journal in years past, I would do this in the book journal. I didn't do one in 2025, so I'm bringing back the tradition in 2026. All right, let's get into it. Round 1. Like I said, this is random, so the books that are facing off against each other, they're not based on specific ratings or anything. It's random. Okay, so first we have I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman versus Nightcrawling by Layla Motley. So I Who Have Never Known Men I picked up for a book club over on Fable. It's about a girl who lives in a prison, essentially, with a whole group of other women, and all of them are older than her. They are being held prisoner there by men, and then suddenly one day all the men disappear and they're able to get out of their prison and they walk out into the world and see what has been made of the world in their time as they've been imprisoned. It was really interesting and very cerebral and introspective, and a book that I did enjoy. The story is being told to you by the main character, who is a little girl at the beginning of the story and then gets to old age by the end of it. She's telling the story during her last like couple days. She's retelling it, she's rewriting it and telling it to you. So you're getting a retroactive look at what happened, all the challenges that these women faced, both in the prison and as they left. This is a translation. Originally it is a French work and I liked it a lot. Honestly, I got to the end of it and it was a bittersweet ending and not one that I'm used to reading. Sometimes I crave for books to end in a more bittersweet, heart-wrenching way. I am happy with happy endings, don't get me wrong, who doesn't love a happy ending? But sometimes I'm like, it would have been so interesting if things had gone wrong. I like that it was kind of left a little open-ended, a little, what did I just read? So yeah, I liked I Who Have Never Known Men. And Nightcrawling by Layla Motley, I originally thought that it was going to be kind of like the movie Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal, where it's the profession of going out and kind of like following police radars on things happening in the evening and going out and getting those pictures and selling them to newspapers. If you haven't watched that movie, great movie. It is not about that. I got that super duper wrong. It is about a young woman who finds herself in need of money to support both her and her brother and a little boy who lives in their apartment complex, whose mom is negligent and has pretty much walked out on him. And she finds herself literally just like tripping into sex work. And then things unfold. She gets caught in the middle of a really big investigation, and watching her navigate that as a newly turned 18-year-old girl is really, really tough. And the characters in her life are really frustrating. And it seems like she's the only one that really wants to get a handle on her life, really by any means necessary. And sometimes she's very detached from the things that are going on. And you kind of want to shake her and tell her like, hey, this is not okay. Like, you're just a girl. You should just be living your life. And it's so frustrating to read. When I finished the book, I got to the author's note, and apparently it is based on true events that happened. The case that happened with a police department that got caught doing some stuff they should not have been doing. Reading it was already like reading a really unforgiving real life account, and then seeing that it was based on something that happened in real life, so tough. Such a tough read, but so good. Layla Motley has a very clear voice. I know that she's written other stuff, and I'm excited to get to her other books in a little bit though. I need a I need a break from being sad while reading. Now, like I said, this is gonna be vibes based. I think just on like rereadability and general like enjoyment, I'm gonna say I Who Have Never Known Men is the winner of this round. Super exciting. Carl's Doomsday Scenario by Matt Dinniman and Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I got into Dungeon Crawler Carl this year. I've gotten through 5 of the books so far, so a lot of them are gonna be, all 5 of them are gonna be in this competition we've got going on. Carl's Doomsday Scenario is the 2nd book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, and Lord of the Flies is the beloved classic. So tough picks. Just a little synopsis on Dungeon Crawler Carl. It is about a man and his cat. The whole planet Earth gets flattened, and they get this little message that pops up and is like, hey, your planet flattened. If you want to live, you can go into the world dungeon and play for your survival. Really interesting premise. I will say that Carl's Doomsday Scenario is my least favorite of all the ones I've read so far, mostly because I think it's a bridge book. Like, the first book was really strong, and I'll talk about the 3rd book in a little bit, but the 3rd book was also really strong, and I think the 2nd book just set up some stuff that is now happening towards the other books in the series and serving as a bridge between book 1 and the rest of the series. So it's like the least interesting to me so far. Lord of the Flies was actually a reread for me. I talk about it in a reading vlog where I read 3 books in 3 days. To say that I enjoyed it wouldn't be right. It's definitely a classic. It's definitely worth being up there in the classics. The message and the themes it discusses are very poignant and universal, and I think timely, but timely at all times. So I enjoyed it in the sense that it felt very much like a classic like book that you can sink your teeth into. I had some gripes with it, mostly with like the dialogue, but that's small potatoes compared to the actual body of work. So between Carl's Doomsday Scenario and Lord of the Flies, I think Lord of the Flies is gonna take it. Up next is Mexican Gothic versus The Butcher's Masquerade, which is the 5th book in Dungeon Crawler Carl. Mexican Gothic is about a girl who gets sent to check on her cousin who has been sick for a little while. This takes place in the 1950s, so it's very much like beginning of women's rights, and it is taking place in like Mexico, California area. So our main character, she wants to continue her education. She wants to get a master's degree in anthropology, I believe. I don't remember what she settles on, but she does want to get her master's degree. And her dad, who is kind of like new money wealthy, is like, okay, I will let you get your master's degree if you go check on your cousin and make sure that she's okay and maybe bring her back to safety. She is very headstrong and is like, okay, if anybody can do it, it's me. So she goes out to retrieve her cousin and very quickly figures out that something is amiss with the family that she has married into. Her husband is very handsome, disconcertingly so. His sister is very controlling of the household. The like head patriarch of the house is this really old guy, and he is so ill, and they all are scared of him for some reason. And there's a lot of really weird rules in the house, like it's always very cold and damp, and nobody is allowed to like turn on candles or smoke or whatever. A lot of them don't really leave the house. So our main character, whose name has slipped my mind, she immediately gets to work on figuring out what's going on, and what's going on is weird. Super disconcerting. I read Mexican Gothic, Nightcrawling, and then a couple of other books at around the same time, and they were all just like sad to me. I really enjoyed this book for what it was, but it did dampen my mood a lot, I'm not gonna lie. The Butcher's Masquerade. I'm just gonna be honest with you, it's the winner in this round, okay? It's really tough to pit like a standalone book to the 5th book in a series, because if I'm on book 5 in a series, I'm kind of committed to what's going on. Also, if it's good, then book 5, like, stuff is happening. Things are getting crazy, and boy did things get crazy in this book, okay? That's all I'm gonna say. The Butcher's Masquerade wins this round. Up next, we have Blade Breaker by Victoria Aveyard, which is the 2nd book in the Realm Breaker trilogy, and People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I was really blown away by Realm Breaker, the 1st book in the series, because it was so much more complex and sprawling than I was expecting. It's a YA series. I think it recently was re-categorized as an adult series, which I have opinions on that, but we can talk about that later. We'll talk about it now. I think that it needs to be kind of rewritten for it to be considered adult, but it is a very complex fantasy world that should have been adult to begin with. I think that some of the dialogue and most of the dialogue, honestly, I'd say most of the dialogue brings it down to a YA level, and I think that that was probably done on purpose. But the world itself, like, is very high fantasy. So I don't know if it should have been recategorized into adult, but I will say that it is a fantastically fleshed out world. Blade Breaker was maybe like 100 pages too long for me. This is a series inspired by the Lord of the Rings franchise, trilogy, whatever. Victoria Aveyard has said this herself. She is a big fan of the Lord of the Rings, and she was like, I wanted to create something similar in that world where it's like a band of misfits trying to save a world that is doomed. I think it falls into some of the same trappings as Lord of the Rings does, which is verbose. Being a little bit too verbose sometimes. I found myself kind of drifting away from the story sometimes. It took me a while to read this book. I picked it up in January and I didn't finish it until May because I forced myself to finish it. Otherwise I would not have finished it because I kind of just had to put my foot down and get it done. Little too long, little too long. People We Meet on Vacation was the last Emily Henry book that I had to read to catch up on her whole romance backlog. And it wasn't my favorite one of her books. It was definitely my least favorite couple, also my least favorite situation. It was really tough to root for the couple because both of them are like, you know, the whole thing is like friends to lovers. But they're the kind of friends that for multiple years were like, no, we're like really, really friends. And then it turns out that they had feelings for each other all along, either one or the other or both of them at the same time. I think the concept of them going on vacation every year together and being different people on different vacations was really cool. But I got to the end of it and I was like, I don't like either of you. And that's tough in a romance. It's really tough in a romance to be like, wow, I don't like either of you ever. I did read it so that I could watch the movie. The movie was entertaining, but it didn't make me feel any better about both of these characters. Anyways, all that being said, People We Meet on Vacation still takes this one. I think Blade Breaker was just legitimately too long. And at least People We Meet on Vacation, I was entertained by the messiness of it the whole time. Up next is Our Perfect Storm by Carly Fortune versus the Dungeon Anarchist's Cookbook, which is the 3rd book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. We're back to it. I'm so sorry. This is just my whole TBR versus Dungeon Crawler Carl, which is another reason why I almost didn't do this one, because I was like, am I really gonna sit here and pit like 18 other books versus the 5 Dungeon Crawler Carl books that I've read this year? I kind of just had to go for it. We'll see who wins at the end. Okay. Our Perfect Storm by Carly Fortune is about 2 friends to lovers. I have picked up a lot of friends to lovers books this year and I kind of want to stop. Okay, not a big fan of the trope. I do enjoy like a friendship, 2 characters that meet and build a little bit of a friendship before moving on to the romance, because I feel like that's a strong basis for a romance. But when it's like we've been friends since we were 5 years old and we told everybody that we were in love with each other, but we were actually pining for each other the entire time, Anyways, Our Perfect Storm follows two characters. Let me see if I remember their names. I remember the main female character's name is Frankie. Frankie and George. I googled it. So Frankie is about to get married when her soon-to-be husband calls off the wedding, legitimately mourning that they're gonna get married. She's distraught, she's depressed, she is spiraling. She moves back in with her parents to figure out her life because they were moved in together and her whole life revolved around this guy, and she was like, okay, I need a little bit of a break. I need to get my stuff together. Her ex reaches out and is like, hey, the honeymoon is paid for. You should still go. Like, it's a beautiful place. Go. And the place is Tofino, which I have now learned everybody wants to go there. I don't know if it's because of this book or it's just a place that everybody has always wanted to go to and I'm just now opening my eyes to it. But yeah, Tofino. She's hemming and hawing as to whether or not she's gonna go. And then her friend George offers to go with her. Best friend George, they've been best friends since they were like 7 years old. They were next door neighbors and then they stayed friends through college and beyond, and they end up going on this trip together. George sets out on this trip to help Frankie get through her breakup, to go through the full grieving process in the 7 days that they have there together. What do you think happens? Frankie and George are very sweet together and, you know, they end up together and they figure all their bull out. But my favorite part about the story is actually Frankie's relationship with her mom, which starts out very strained, but towards the end they work on coming back together as like mother and daughter. It's very sweet and very emotional and made me want to call my mom and my dad immediately. So I did as soon as I finished this book, just to talk to them, just because I could. So there you go. And then the Dungeon Anarchist's cookbook was really fun. Like, I don't know how else to say it. If you ever heard anything about Dungeon Crawler Carl, this is the book where they go into the Iron Tangle, which is a really convoluted train system. You're told in the beginning of the book to just go along for the ride, like don't try and figure out the train system. And I'm glad I listened to that because it was really tricky. Okay, I tried to like kind of follow along about like because it's a dungeon and there are rules and I'm like, oh, maybe I can figure out some of the rules. It was tough and I ended up quitting maybe like 70% of the book. I was like, you know what, someone else can figure it out, I'm along for the ride. But it was a lot of fun, and one big component of the rest of the series gets introduced in this book, and I think that this is the book where we really start to see a shift in Carl as a character. So I don't know, I really liked it. And it wins this round. Oh my god. Just on the basis that the friends to lovers trope is really not my vibe. Up next, we have The Sixth Nik by Daniel Kraus and Starter Villain by John Scalzi. So The Sixth Nik is a sci-fi horror and Starter Villain is like a humorous contemporary fiction. In The Sixth Nik, we're following Cecilia, who is a Nifikoc, which is essentially like a cult figure. She, at a very young age, was selected to be a Nifikoc just because of the abilities that she showed, and she gets selected for this surgery where they insert these little metal discs called Niks into her skull, and that heightens her abilities. She is number 54 in a line of Nifikocs, and so then she is trained for a few years, what is it, like 6 or 7 years, to use her abilities, and then she's sent off to do a chore. And the chore is just a thing that she has to do in order to help humanity move forward, essentially. For her chore, she is to get on a spaceship with a colorful cast of characters and go to another planet to solve some sort of mystery. And it is assumed that whatever she solves or whatever issue she resolves will help humanity move forward. Nifikocs have a very short lifespan. They die at around the age of 11, and then a new Nifikoc is chosen. So she's kind of against the clock when it comes to completing her chore. This is a capital S science fiction, capital H horror book. Triggers for body horror and horrors of various varieties. I've read a lot of science fiction and I've read a decent amount of horror and enjoy the horror genre in general. I think I consume a lot more like movies, TV shows, and stuff that are related to horror as opposed to like reading books. and I think it's because it just makes me squirm so hard when I'm reading it. But this book is truly unique. It like stands on its own, and I'm a big fan of Daniel Kraus in general. This book kind of solidified it for me. He's just a bangin' writer. That's all I gotta say. And then Starter Villain by John Scalzi. This was actually a book club read for my book club on Fable. This isn't the first of my book club reads that I've talked about, but it's the first one that I remembered to mention it in. So if you want to join a book club on Fable, I will leave the link in the description. But Starter Villain by John Scalzi is about a guy whose name I cannot remember. Man, I'm really bad at remembering character names. I should just be Googling them, but I'm lazy. Let's Google it. Our main guy, his name is Charlie. So Charlie is down on his luck. His dad has passed. He's had to leave his career. He's now a substitute teacher while he tries to get a leg up, and he's kind of just been kicked down by the world. Also went through a divorce. And then he hears that his estranged uncle has passed, and his estranged rich uncle. That's an important caveat. And then all of a sudden someone pulls up and is like, hey, your uncle was rich, and he was rich because he was a supervillain. Charlie is suddenly thrown into a world of things that he never imagined were possible. I'm talking like a secret lair in a volcano, talking dolphins, hyper intelligent cats, and he is made the boss of it essentially overnight. That's the premise, and if you're interested, I would just recommend reading it. It's a really short read, and it was very entertaining and really funny. So yeah, that's Starter Villain by John Scalzi. Between these two though, I'm gonna have to give it to the Sixth Nik. It's definitely much more up my alley. That book was so good. I also recommend that one. And finally in this round, we have Madonna in a Fur Coat by Sabahattin Ali and Swordheart by T. Kingfisher. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. I did not like Madonna in a Fur Coat. I've seen a lot of people who read that book call it like the epitome of yearning. Oh my goodness, the yearning. I love that book. Classic for a reason. That was not what I got out of it. I was annoyed for 95% of that book. What people read as yearning, I read as annoying, and I'll leave it at that. Actually, no. The one thing that I got out of this book was really to be honest with yourself, like be true and honest with yourself about what you want, and try your best to live with no regrets. Because at the end of the day, at the end of your life, when you look back, the only person that is gonna be to blame is you. And that's that. Swordheart by T. Kingfisher gives me all of the 1980s to early 2000s medieval revival feels, okay? I'm talking Princess Bride, Shrek, Ella Enchanted. All of them had a baby, and it's this book, okay? I loved it. It was such a cozy read. I picked this book up at the library mainly because the cover was beautiful. Like, it spoke to me. And I picked it up and read it within 48 hours. It was wonderful. We're following Hala, who has just had to deal with the unexpected death of her uncle. He's not like her blood uncle. He's the uncle of her husband. He also died, so she's a widow, and then she stayed with her husband's uncle to kind of like take care of him because he was a little older. He passes away, the uncle, and leaves her with his entire estate. And the uncle's family is not happy about that. They are not having it, so they lock her up in a tower, and she is desperate, and in a bid to protect herself, she unsheathes a sword, and it turns out there is a magical warrior living in the sword. That's all I gotta say, right? It writes itself. The magical warrior, his name is Sarkis, and because Hala has drawn the sword, he is now sworn to protect her. So he gets her out of there, and they go to figure out the whole estate situation, and they get into a bunch of trouble, honestly, along the way. We get a third character and fourth character added to like their adventure group, and it is such a good time through this like medieval magical world. Yeah, something that I liked, which is definitely not common in fantasy, or at least the fantasy that I've picked up, is that Hala is a little older. She's not your typical 16-year-old assassin. Like, she is just a woman who is trying to get through the world, and she's concerned about her family back home. She's concerned about how she's gonna survive to live another day, and now she's also concerned about Sarkis, who, as they work together and start to build a bond, she also kind of wants to help him figure out why he is stuck in the sword and how to free him. So yeah, no, overall really interesting, overall cozy and lovely and wonderful and medieval. So Swordheart wins. that's all I'm gonna say. Okay, yeah, we made it through the end of round 1. Let's go to round 2. Now, because it was an odd number, round 2 is gonna be putting some of those books up against new books, and I'm gonna try and do this kind of rapid fire because I've been talking for a while already. Oof. Okay, round 2. We have If the Dead Belong Here by Carson Faust versus I Who Have Never Known Men. If the Dead Belong Here is a story about a little girl who goes missing and her sister who is set on finding her. So we're following Nadine, and she is convinced that her dad, who is divorced from their mom, is the one that took her little sister because she was whisked away in the middle of the night, no trace, no breaking and entering. So that could be the only answer, right? Maybe. It's a story, without giving too much away because I think it's a really interesting story. I would say that it's a story about generational trauma, but also like the importance of staying connected to your roots. I connected a lot with Nadine because she is an oldest daughter. She's doing her best to keep her household afloat. And at the end of the day, she kind of figures out that she needs to go to the root of the issue, which is the roots of their family, to find a solution. I've mentioned this before, I think, but my family immigrated here from Cuba, and there are times when I feel really disconnected from my culture, and I'm always wondering, like, what am I missing? Like, what special sauce am I missing? Because I'm not super tied to my origins. So there's questions there about, like, should you dig into your past and figure out where you come from, or are you in spite of your past and in spite of where your family comes from? Whenever I find that sort of theme in literature, I am always super interested by it because I feel like I can connect to it. And so I really enjoyed this story. It is about like indigenous roots, so a little different from my lived experience, but a little bit the same. Between If the Dead Belong Here and I Who Have Never Known Men, both books that I really liked, I'm gonna have to go with If the Dead Belong Here as the winner of this round. I'm just now remembering that this is kind of like the first time that both of these books are introduced into this bracket because of odd numbers or whatever. So this is the first time we're talking about Slaughterhouse-Five versus Killers of the Flower Moon. Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, a classic, is a story of a guy going through World War II. It was the first book I picked up this year, and I'm not gonna lie, it's a little kooky. It is a classic for a reason, and I enjoyed it a ton. There are aliens that come into play and time travel. I don't know how else to explain it if you haven't read it. If you know, you know. And if you don't know, you should find out. You should read Slaughterhouse-Five. Now, Killers of the Flower Moon is about the Osage murders, which I knew nothing about before reading this book. And then I read about it, and then I was mad. This is another story about Native American people and the struggles that they have gone through in America because of America. And it's a really frustrating read. If you don't know about the Osage murders, this is also, it says it right there, the Osage murders and the birth of the FBI. So we're talking about injustices against Native American people and how the FBI came to be. And spoiler alert, it's a shit show. It's a mess. It is frustrating. It is sad. There's a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. I did watch it afterwards, and it was not what I thought it would be after reading the book, but it was still really interesting to watch kind of like how it got adapted. But yeah, sad and frustrating and really good, like really well written. And the way that David Grann tells the story is poignant and like leaves space for the tragedy of it all. It's told in like 3 parts. In the first part, we're following Molly, who is an Osage Indian. In the second part, we're following mainly the story of the FBI agent that got sent to investigate the murders. And in the last part, we get David Grant's point of view as he talks about like the journalism behind everything that he went through. Essentially like a retrospective view on the events of the story. And I think that was really well done. So out of these two, I'm gonna give it to Killers of the Flower Moon. Up next is Tourist Season versus Lord of the Flies. Nobody has ever pit these books against each other. Tourist Season is by Brynne Weaver. If you haven't heard of Brynne Weaver, she is the author of the Ruinous Love trilogy, which was like Butcher and Blackbird, Leather and Lark, can't remember the third one, Scythe and Sparrow. That's the third one. Serial killer romance. Serial killer romance. It's all serial killer romance. She's managed to just blend this genre in a way that works. For that, I gotta give her style points. Like, in this story, we're following a character who does get mentioned in the Ruinous Love trilogy, so this is kind of like a spin-off. Our main characters are Harper and Nolan. Harper is mentioned in the Ruinous Love trilogy. She is introduced in the first book and she gets saved by the two characters there, and then she kind of like goes off to do her own thing. She is inspired by the serial killers to start doing a little bit of her own serial killing. So she has moved to this place called Cape Carnage, and she is essentially like protecting the people of this small town from dangerous people that come through town. Now, Nolan is one of those dangerous people. He comes into town looking for Harper, actually. He had his own like traumatic issues, and he thinks that Harper was part of the group who caused his trauma. And so mayhem ensues. Now, one thing I'm gonna say, I thought that this was gonna be another interconnected standalone trilogy. It is not. It is not. I got to the end of it and I was like, oh, they're gonna like resolve their issues in the next like 15 pages. No, they're not, because they're gonna resolve their issues in the next book and the book after that. There's 2 more books. The next one is called Harvest Season, and it is already out, and I'm waiting for it to be available at my library so that I could get it and read it, because I really, really liked Tourist Season. Between these two, is this gonna be an upset? Are people gonna be like, why would you pick any other book above Lord of the Flies? The answer is yes. The answer is Tourist Season is the winner. Just on pure enjoyment alone, I would reread Tourist Season. I would reread Tourist Season right now. I don't know if I would reread Lord of the Flies. I kind of like, it's good, but that's it. Okay, we have Dungeon Crawler Carl versus The Butcher's Masquerade, Book 1 versus Book 5. I'll make this quick. Book 5 wins for reasons. Obviously, I liked the first book. It got me on track to reading all the other books, but The Butcher's Masquerade is a lot better. Is a lot better. I think just a lot more things are going on, and I'm just like more connected with the characters and the story, and there's just like a lot more moving parts. So yeah, Butcher's Masquerade, winner. All right, up next, Six of Crows versus People We Meet on Vacation. You all now know how I feel about People We Meet on Vacation. Six of Crows is gonna take this one, and I am so glad I finally got Six of Crows. Oh my goodness. I read Ruin and Rising before this, and as soon as I finished Ruin and Rising, I was like, I need Six of Crows. I had been waiting to finish the Shadow and Bone trilogy to get into Six of Crows, and once I was done with it, immediately into Six of Crows. Okay, I finished that thing in like 4 days. But yeah, Six of Crows wins this one. Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir versus The Dungeon Anarchist's Cookbook. I read Project Hail Mary, and then within like a few weeks got to watch the movie. What a time. Okay, I love being present for pop culture moments like this, and Project Hail Mary was one of them. It really took over the internet. The book itself was fabulous. I loved it. And it's a story that I think will stick with me for a really long time, both the book and the movie. I'm just now remembering that I watched the movie twice. Like, I watched it once when it came out, and then a second time because my parents were like, oh, we want to watch the movie, but we, you know, haven't had a chance. And I was like, oh, let's go. The winner in this round is gonna be Project Hail Mary. A little bit of an outfit change because it's a different day. Yeah. Yesterday there was a lot of thunder happening while I was recording, and it did come out in the audio a little bit, and I had to stop filming altogether because it was just getting a little bit too loud. Today, I was hoping to be able to avoid any storms while I was recording, but it's still thundering outside, so I'm sorry if you can hear it, but hopefully I was able to get this mic audio to work. Anyways, where were we? We were talking about the Gate of the Feral Gods versus the Sixth Nik. So, Gate of the Feral Gods is the 4th book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, which means that I have now talked about all of them, or I will now have talked about all of them. I mentioned that book 3 was where Carl starts to go through some pretty big character changes. I want to amend that. I want to say that it's actually this book where he starts to kind of go mask off, if you will. Up until this book, his attitude towards his current situation is very much like, this is happening to me. And there's a certain moment in Gate of the Feral Gods where he starts to take control of the situation. And I think that the story has gotten so much more interesting since then. His character arc has been pretty interesting since this book. So a lot of other stuff happens, but it's book 4. I feel like I can't really tell you much besides I gave it 5 stars and it was fantastic. Now, the Sixth Nik, standalone sci-fi versus 4th book in a series. We saw how that played out with Mexican Gothic and the 5th book in the series, The Butcher's Masquerade. In this case, though, I think the Sixth Nik is gonna take it. The Sixth Nik is gonna take it. It's true, it's a very, very fascinating story, and did you hear that thunder? I hope not. And again, on rereadability, I would sit down and pick up the Sixth Nik right now. Is this just like the rereading bracket? Would I reread it, the bracket? Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo and Swordheart by T. Kingfisher. Here's how I feel about the Shadow and Bone series, and I said this in the other video as well. Shadow and Bone, fascinating. Siege and Storm, 2nd book, lost me. Ruin and Rising, picked up the pieces. I think overall, Ruin and Rising is probably the strongest book in the series, but still, it comes with the baggage of the rest of the series, and I liked Swordheart a lot more. I will say that Ruin and Rising ties up a lot of things really nicely for that trilogy, gives it a satisfying conclusion, which I was really happy about. All that considered, I think Swordheart is the stronger book here. We are on to round 3, and I know that I said last time that I was gonna try and do this rapid fire. I swear this round will be rapid fire, okay? Because I've already talked about all of these books. So let's get into it. If the Dead Belong Here versus Killers of the Flower Moon. Ooh, both of these are books about Native American people in America. Interesting how that shook out. One of them is fiction, one of them is nonfiction. My gut is telling me Killers of the Flower Moon. Killers of the Flower Moon is phenomenal, and I think an important piece of work, and one that everyone should kind of read, or at least get familiar with the story, and I would recommend that one more than I would recommend If the Dead Belong Here, even though If the Dead Belong Here was a fantastic book. Next we have Tourist Season versus The Butcher's Masquerade. I'm just gonna put that there, and we will be on our way. Six of Crows versus Project Hail Mary. I did really enjoy Six of Crows. I really did. But Project Hail Mary, oh, such a good book. It's going to Project Hail Mary. Yeah, Project Hail Mary wins this one. The Sixth Nik versus Swordheart. How am I feeling right now? Litmus test. How am I feeling right now? Although, logically, I want to say the Sixth Nik. Emotionally, I'm saying Swordheart. When put up against each other like this, it's like, do I want to have a good time, or do I want to feel like crawling out of my skin sometimes? And I think I'm gonna go for the good time. In this case. Yep. A beloved player has just been kicked out. Okay. Semifinals. Oh, didn't know we'd ever get here, honestly. So, semifinals. Let's get it. Okay, nonfiction, Killers of the Flower Moon versus The Butcher's Masquerade. I'm giving it to The Butcher's Masquerade. Oh my gosh. It's so good. Like I said in Gate of the Feral Gods, I have revealed that Carl starts going on a more interesting character arc. And The Butcher's Masquerade is like, we're in it. We're in the beginnings of it, I feel. There's still 6, 7, 8. I think there's 5 more books after The Butcher's Masquerade. So I'm wondering if he's going to, he being the author Matt Dinniman, I'm wondering if he's going to take this character arc through the end, or if this is something that we're gonna see play out until maybe book 8 or 9, and then seeing a separate arc for Carl. And it's just an opera at this point. There are so many characters, so many different storylines happening. A masterpiece. A masterpiece. I can't describe it as anything else, and it makes me really excited for the next couple books. Have I said this yet? The Butcher's Masquerade wins this round. Project Hail Mary versus Swordheart. Oh boy. I'm really just going off of vibes now. I've been going off of vibes this entire time, but now it's like there are zero thoughts. There are just vibes. So I'm giving this one to Project Hail Mary. Rocky Grace, Save Stars. Oh, so good. Now, I thought it would be fun to do a third place bracket, and we've got Killers of the Flower Moon and Swordheart in this third place bracket. Vibes, 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 vibes. I think I'm giving it to Swordheart. Ooh, I think I'm giving it to Swordheart. Yeah, that feels right. I'm just dwelling on the story a little more. I'm dwelling on their journey. I'm thinking about Hala and the, like, everything that she... Oh, and then there isn't a third act breakup. It falls into that romantic kind of cadence where towards the end there has to be a conflict. I guess you could call it a third act breakup. Yeah, they kind of like, they have a fight. It's more like a third act fight. And then some stuff happens. Oh, so tense. Okay, yeah, I'm giving it to Swordheart. It's my bracket. Fight with a wall. Finals. Who do you think is gonna win? Leave it in the comments. Our 2 contenders. They've fought through the ranks of this bracket. The competition has been tense. Frankly, I didn't know how it was gonna shake out, to be honest with you. I did expect, just on probability alone, I did expect one of the Dungeon Crawler Carl books to end up here. The fact that it's The Butcher's Masquerade makes sense, since it is the 5th book in the series, the most history, blah 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 blah. The fact that Project Hail Mary is here, truly, I'm looking back at the bracket, when it was Project Hail Mary versus Six of Crows, it got a little dicey, okay? I didn't really show it on camera. I think I held out. I've been trying to be pretty neutral, but that was dicey. I didn't know which way it was gonna go, and then we were facing off against Swordheart, and I did really like that book, and it just, Project Hail Mary has really pulled through. I think a big part of it is the cultural phenomenon that this book and movie were back in like March and April. I will say that, but that's just what happens in these brackets, okay? Anything can happen. Right. We are down to these 2 books. Who will be the winner? Drumroll, please. In second place, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. A book about a man and his sidekick, who I think I can say is a stone alien. I think I can say that now because the movie really, no spoiler alert, really, it put that big plot point out there, so now everybody knows about it. I feel like I can say it. And in first place, a book about a cat and her sidekick man. Really. It is The Butcher's Masquerade by Matt Dinniman, the 5th book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. Wow, we did it! My favorite book so far this year, according to this bracket, is The Butcher's Masquerade. Reviewing the bracket, I think it checks out. I'm confident in saying that. Here's the real kicker. Will another Dungeon Crawler Carl book turn out to be my number 1 for the second half of the year? And then will it face off against The Butcher's Masquerade, and will it win? Or will another book that is not part of the Dungeon Crawler Carl series win the bracket in the second half of the year and therefore face off against this Dungeon Crawler Carl book, and who will win? I've been talking for way too long. I'm starting to not make sense, so I think this is a great place to stop. And that is it. If you stuck around for this long, thank you so much for watching. You might as well subscribe. Might as well leave a little comment, might as well find me on Instagram or TikTok or Fable. My handle is the same across all platforms. It is at biblichorandmint. Shoot me a DM, leave me a comment, let's chat, let's talk. Tell me what is your favorite book so far this year. I would love to know. Okay, that's it. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye. Mwah.